I hadn't been back to Willow Creek in 16 years. Not since the night I packed a duffel bag with my college acceptance letter still folded inside and took the 3 a.m. bus to Boston. I swore I'd never return, that I'd carve out a new life so far removed from the dirt roads and sour whiskey breath of my mother's kitchen that I'd forget it ever existed. And I did, until everything collapsed. It started with a phone call I never expected. Not from a neighbor, not from a hospital, not even from the local church, because, of course, no one in town knew where I'd gone. The news came from an email buried in the company bankruptcy paperwork. Our logistics firm, mine, had failed. My business partner siphoned the assets, vanished overseas, and left me with lawsuits and a frozen bank account. And suddenly, with nowhere else to run, all roads pointed backward, toward the one place I never thought I'd see again. I arrived on a bitter October afternoon, the kind that smelled like cold earth and dead leaves. My rental car rattled along the gravel path like it knew it didn't belong here. Willow Creek hadn't changed much, still just a speck on the map of Vermont, where the fields outnumber the people and gossip moves faster than cell reception. I passed the old general store, closed now, the feed mill, the cemetery, then finally my childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered, grayer. The paint had long since surrendered to time, and the front steps leaned like tired bones. But the apple tree in the yard still stood tall, its twisted branches bare now, reaching into the gray sky like fingers. I parked by the front gate, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit, and sat there gripping the steering wheel. Why did I come back? What was I even hoping for? The wind pushed a swirl of leaves across the path as I stepped out of the car. The air bit at my face. I hesitated at the gate, then pushed it open. It creaked like it remembered me. The yard was clean. That stopped me. Someone had swept the leaves, stacked firewood by the shed. This wasn't the chaos I expected. I climbed the steps slowly, trying to reconcile the memories in my head with what I was seeing in front of me. Before I could knock, the door opened. A man stood in the doorway. Early 30s, lean with dark blonde hair and the kind of quiet posture that makes you pause. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled, a dish towel in one hand. His eyes, blue-gray and steady, met mine, and for a moment neither of us said a word. Then he asked, "Can I help you?" I blinked. I'm looking for Martha Whitaker. This is her house." His expression shifted. Not surprise. Recognition, maybe. Or something else entirely. "She's here," he said slowly, "but she's not well. Are you family?" "I'm her daughter," I said, and the words tasted like rust. A pause. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." I walked into the house I once escaped, and it was nothing like I remembered. The walls had been painted a soft cream, the floors scrubbed clean. There was a vase of dried lavender on the table. A faint smell of thyme and something warm, like apples and cinnamon, hung in the air. I didn't understand. "Who are you?" I asked, still standing in the entryway. "My name's Caleb," he said. "I've been living here, taking care of Martha since her stroke 2 years ago." "Stroke?" I echoed. My stomach dropped. He nodded. "Left side's paralyzed. She can't walk. Sometimes she forgets things. Sometimes she remembers too much." I stared at him. "Why you?" "You're not related," he finished. "No. My father was Michael Monroe. He used to live next door." Michael Monroe! The name rang faint bells from a childhood I tried to erase. "She was alone," he said simply. Nobody else stepped up. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Why him? Why now? Why not me? But all I said was, "Can I see her?" Caleb looked at me for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "She's in the back bedroom. Just don't expect too much." I followed him down the narrow hallway, past the old framed photos of a younger Martha, photos I never remembered seeing, and stopped outside a closed door. Caleb didn't knock. He just opened it gently and stepped aside. The room smelled of medicine and mint tea. The blinds were drawn halfway. On the bed, propped up by pillows, was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Her gray hair was neatly brushed, her lips pale. Her left hand lay limp across the blanket. Her eyes, those sharp, slate eyes, flicked toward me as I entered, and for a second, something flickered there. Recognition? No, not quite. Her brow furrowed. "Who are you?" I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Then I forced them out. "It's me, Mom. It's Lauren." She stared at me for a beat too long, then shook her head slowly. "No, my daughter left a long time ago. You're not her." And just like that, the breath went out of me. I stood there in the room where I was born, where I learned to walk, where I cried into my pillow night after night as a teenager, and I felt like a stranger. Caleb's voice was soft behind me. "She has good days, and bad ones. This might be in between." I nodded, though my throat burned. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not even when she turned her face to the wall and said, "Tell her to go. I don't want ghosts in my house." Caleb gently guided me back into the hallway, his hand light on my shoulder. "Give her time," he said. "She needs time to remember, and maybe to forgive." But all I could think was, what if there's nothing left to remember? I didn't sleep that first night. Caleb offered me the old guest room upstairs. Said it hadn't been used in years, but he'd cleaned it just in case. In case of what? I wanted to ask. In case I came back. In case my guilt finally outweighed my pride. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and carried my small suitcase up the creaky stairs like I belonged here. The bed was firmer than I remembered. The same floral wallpaper, peeled a little at the corners. There was a photograph on the dresser. Me, maybe 11, grinning beside a man with dark hair. Richard Donovan, my legal father, gone before I finished high school. I hadn't seen that photo in decades. I lay there for hours listening to the house breathe. It felt alive in a strange way, not haunted by ghosts, but by silence, the kind of silence that waits. I thought of my mother, how she had looked through me like I was a stranger, and of Caleb, who moved through this house with a kind of calm purpose I didn't understand. By morning, the sky was washed in gray. I went downstairs and found Caleb in the kitchen, frying eggs and buttering toast like he'd always lived here. "Coffee?" he asked. I nodded. He slid a mug toward me, then sat opposite. The silence between us stretched. Finally, I said, "Why are you really here?" He looked up. "I told you. I'm taking care of her." "Yeah, but why? You're not related. You could have walked away." He stirred his coffee slowly. "Maybe it's not about blood." "Then what is it about?" Caleb met my eyes. "Maybe about promises." Before I could press further, a soft voice came from the hallway. "Caleb." It was her. He stood, already moving toward the voice. I followed a few steps behind, heart hammering. Maybe she remembered. Maybe something shifted overnight. She was sitting up a little higher in bed, a knitted shawl around her shoulders. When she saw Caleb, her face softened. "Is there more of that tea?" "Of course," he said. "I'll bring it right in." Her gaze slid past him to me. Her brow furrowed again. "She's here," Caleb said gently. "Your daughter, Lauren." My mother's face twitched. "I told you, I don't have a daughter." Something twisted deep inside me. "You did," I said. "You had one, and you lost her." Her eyes met mine. There was something there, anger, confusion, maybe grief, but no warmth, no recognition, just walls. Caleb returned with the tea and helped her sip from the mug. She didn't look at me again. I backed away and left the room, swallowing down something sharp and aching. Later that afternoon, I wandered into the living room. The house was still too familiar. The bookshelf where I used to hide behind dusty encyclopedias. The patch in the floorboard that creaked exactly when you didn't want it to. And on the mantel, photos. New ones. I stepped closer. There were pictures of Caleb and my mother. Him helping her in the garden. her smiling, just faintly beside a basket of apples. And tucked among them, one I didn't expect, a younger version of my mother, arm in arm with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, kind-eyed, with the same jawline as Caleb. "Michael Monroe," Caleb said behind me, his voice quiet. I turned. "Your father." He nodded. "He was close with your mother. A long time ago." "How close?" He hesitated. "They were friends. Before your father." I stared at the photo. She never mentioned him. "She wouldn't have," Caleb said. "People didn't talk about that kind of thing back then." "Talk about what?" He looked away. "They were in love. Once." The words landed with a strange weight. I couldn't explain why, but something in me shifted. That photo, that look on her face, it wasn't just a moment. It was a window into a life I didn't know existed. "She married my father," I said, almost to myself. Caleb nodded. "Michael told me he never stopped loving her." A silence stretched between us. I stepped back from the mantel. "So what?" "You're here to finish what he started." He looked at me, steady and calm. "I'm here because he asked me to look after her." I narrowed my eyes. "Before he died?" 3 days before, Caleb said. He called me. Said he couldn't do it himself anymore. Said it was his fault she was alone. His voice cracked a little. Not much. Just enough to make me believe him. I sank onto the edge of the couch, staring at my own hands. This is insane. Caleb sat across from me. What's insane is thinking we can live our lives without facing where we came from. I said nothing. Later, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, I stood at the kitchen sink and watched the light fade across the yard. The apple tree was still there, twisted and bare but strong, maybe stronger than ever. I didn't know what I'd come here for. Not really, but I was beginning to understand what I had found. Not peace. Not yet, but maybe a beginning. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. The air felt too thick, the memories too loud. So I pulled on my coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped outside. The sky above Willow Creek was vast and quiet, scattered with stars I hadn't seen in years. The same constellations I used to trace with my finger from the attic window, dreaming of anything that wasn't here. But now, I was here, and the stars hadn't moved at all. I wandered toward the old barn out back. It sagged at the edges but was still standing, like everything else on this property. Inside, the air was dusty, still filled with the scent of hay and rusted tools. I ran my fingers along the edge of an old shelf and felt something smooth, a frame. It was another photograph, not displayed, just left there, forgotten. It was the same man, Michael Monroe, but this time he wasn't beside my mother. He was alone, holding a baby. I held the photo up to the moonlight. The baby had dark hair, a round face. No name on the back, but something in my chest shifted. I slipped the frame into my coat pocket and returned to the house, careful not to wake anyone. I didn't sleep much that night either. The next morning, while Caleb took my mother outside for some fresh air, I wanted the house again. Looking, not for anything in particular, at least, that's what I told myself. But a part of me was chasing something, a thread, a crack in the surface. In the living room, tucked behind a row of worn paperbacks, I found it. A thin wooden box. It didn't lock. Inside, a small bundle of letters, tied with ribbon that had faded to pale pink. Most were bills, old cards, receipts, but at the bottom there it was, a single envelope. No stamp, no address, just her name in a man's handwriting. Martha. I didn't open it immediately. My fingers trembled. The paper was yellowing, the ink slightly smudged. I went to the kitchen, sat at the table, and unfolded it slowly. The letter was dated April, nearly 38 years ago, a month before I was born. Martha, I know you've made your choice, and I won't try to change your mind. But I need you to know, no matter what happens, I will never stop thinking of that child as mine. Even if she carries another man's name, even if I can't be in her life, you are my first and only love. And this baby, your baby, will always have a piece of my soul. Michael. I sat frozen. The words blurred. A piece of my soul. He couldn't have meant me. Could he? I read it again, and again, and again. Every time, the meaning grew heavier, clearer. He believed I was his daughter. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at that letter. But at some point, Caleb walked in. He paused when he saw me. You okay? I looked up, the letter still in my hand. Was your dad the kind of man who wrote letters? Caleb frowned. Sometimes. Why? I handed him the page. He read it once. His jaw tightened slightly. He wrote this the month I was born, I said. I know. You knew. He met my eyes. I found it a year ago. I didn't know if I should tell you. I wasn't sure if it was true, and I figured it wasn't my place. The silence between us cracked wide open. I grew up believing I was Richard Donovan's daughter, I said. He never hugged me, barely looked at me, but I thought that was just him. That maybe I did something wrong. You didn't, Caleb said softly. None of this was your fault. Then whose was it? He didn't answer. I stood and walked to the window, the letter still clenched in my hand. If he really thought I was his child, why didn't he come for me? He tried, Caleb said quietly, after your dad left, but your mother wouldn't let him in. The words felt like stones in my gut. She didn't want his help, Caleb continued. Didn't want anyone's. And by then he was already married. To my mother. I turned sharply. So what are we? You and me? He blinked. What do you mean? If we're, I hesitated. If I'm his daughter, Caleb's face changed. For the first time, real uncertainty crept into his expression. We don't know anything for sure, he said. That letter, it could have just been emotion. It doesn't mean anything biological. I laughed, but it came out hollow. That's easy for you to say. You didn't just find out your whole identity might be a lie. He looked hurt. I didn't mean it that way. I closed my eyes. I know. The kitchen felt colder suddenly. The floor beneath me less steady. I need to ask her, I said. Your mom. I nodded. She might not remember. She has to. I left the kitchen without another word and walked back toward her room. The hallway felt longer than before, every step echoing. At the door I paused. Inside she was sleeping, her breath shallow but even. A small fan turned softly in the corner, the only sound in the room. I stood there for a long time, watching the woman who birthed me, who screamed at me, who held my hand when I had the flu, and tried to imagine what kind of secrets she still carried beneath those bones. She didn't wake until almost noon. I sat in the hallway outside her door, knees drawn up to my chest, the letter still folded in my hand like some kind of key I didn't know how to use. Caleb brought me tea, then disappeared to the back porch, giving me space. Or maybe giving himself space from whatever this was turning into. When I heard her cough, I stood too fast and nearly dropped the letter. I hesitated for just a second, then opened the door and stepped in. Her eyes were open, cloudy but focused. She looked at me for a long moment before saying anything. Lauren, she whispered, like the name had dust on it. I stepped closer. You remember? She blinked. Some days, yes. Some faces. Yours comes and goes. I sat beside the bed. The chair creaked, like it had grown old waiting for me. I need to ask you something. She gave a tired smile. So serious, just like your father. My throat tightened. Which one? She flinched just a little, then sighed. You found the letter. I nodded. Was it true? Her gaze drifted toward the window. The trees outside trembled in the wind. Michael wrote that when I was at my weakest, she said. Pregnant, alone. Your father had left. Stormed out after accusing me of things I didn't say, didn't do. Didn't do. I didn't sleep with Michael, she said flatly. Not after I married Richard. But before. She closed her eyes. Michael and I were something else. Before Richard ever came into the picture, I watched her closely. You were in love. We were kids, she said, but there was no conviction in it. We were young and poor, and we thought love could fix anything. But his mother hated me. She thought I was beneath him. When Richard came along, educated, charming, with a job offer in Boston, I made a choice. You left Michael. I left myself, she whispered, and I've been paying for it ever since. I sat back in the chair, trying to breathe through the tangled mess that had always been my family. So then, Richard is my father. She nodded. By blood, yes, though I sometimes wonder if that makes a man a father. He didn't want me. He didn't know how, she said. He didn't know how to love someone who needed him. I let the silence settle. My hands rested on my knees, clenched and pale. And Michael? I asked. What was he to me? She looked away. He was hope. He kept coming back, even when I pushed him away. After your father left, he came here one night and offered to marry me. Said he'd raise you as his own. But you said no. I couldn't take that charity. I couldn't let him fix a life I'd already ruined. I stared at her. That's pride, not love. She flinched. You think I don't know that now? I don't know what you know. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. I made mistakes, Lauren. So many. And not just with men. With you. My voice cracked. You threw my report cards in the fireplace. I was angry, drunk, lost. You told me I was nothing, that I'd end up just like you. She didn't deny it. I said horrible things. I thought, if I kept you small, you wouldn't leave. I looked at her like I'd never seen her before. Not the monster from my childhood, not the fragile figure in bed, but something else, something broken, human. I left anyway, I said softly. She smiled, a bitter curve of the lips. You were always stronger than me. I reached for her hand. It was cool, brittle like winter branches. She didn't pull away. I'm not here to punish you, I said. I wouldn't blame you if you did. I'm here because I need to understand who I am. You're my daughter. And Caleb. I asked, you know what people might think. I know, she said, but you're not his sister, Lauren. That much I can promise you. A breath I didn't realize I was holding escaped. Her voice dropped. But there's more. I stiffened. More. She looked away again. Michael's wife. Caleb's mother. She didn't die in her sleep. I froze. She found out about us. Not just the past. She saw us talking one night and she knew. I never touched him, but she knew it was still there. My skin chilled. What happened? She left. Disappeared. They said she slipped on ice near the gorge. But people, they whispered. Are you saying? I don't know, she said. I swear it, but I carry that with me. Every day. And Caleb? He doesn't know. A long silence fell. I sat back, stunned. So much pain. So many lives shattered because no one knew how to speak the truth. My mother looked at me again. Don't be like me, she said. If you love someone, say it. If you want forgiveness, ask for it. Don't wait until your hands can't hold the pen. I wanted to be angry, but instead I felt tired. The kind of tired that comes after carrying a weight you didn't know you were holding. Do you regret it all? I asked. She blinked slowly. Not all of it. Her eyes met mine. You. I never deserved you. But I don't regret you. And just like that, I began to forgive her. 2 days later, we drove her to the rehab center just outside Burlington. The trees had started to shed, and the roads were lined with orange and gold, like someone had spilled an autumn-colored secret across the hills. Martha sat in the back seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes watching the horizon like it might offer her peace. She didn't say much during the drive, just the occasional comment about the weather or the tea they served at the facility. I wasn't sure if it was acceptance or exhaustion. Maybe both. Caleb drove. His hands were steady on the wheel, his gaze calm. I watched him from the passenger seat and tried to memorize the way the sunlight framed his face, the way his brow furrowed slightly when he hit a pothole, like even the road mattered to him. When we arrived, the nurse met us at the entrance with a kind smile. I helped my mother settle in, unpacked the small bag of clothes she insisted on folding herself. I placed the letter from Michael in her drawer, tucked beneath her reading glasses. She didn't protest. "I'll visit," I said. "I know," she replied, "but not too often." I tilted my head. "You've got a life to live," she added, "one that doesn't revolve around taking care of me." Something in me softened at that. It felt like a blessing in her own sharp-edged way. When we left the center, the sky had turned gray with the promise of early snow. We stood in the parking lot for a moment, neither of us speaking. Then Caleb turned to me. "Are you going back to Boston?" I shook my head. "No, I think I've run far enough." He studied me. "Then what now?" I glanced back at the road. "Do you remember that old flax mill outside town? The one with the caved-in roof?" I smiled. "That's the one." "You planning on turning it into a museum of bad decisions?" "Worse," I said. "A business." He raised an eyebrow. "Lauren, I know. It's risky. It'll take grants, investors, permits, a miracle or two. But I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to build something that matters. Something real. Here." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're serious. Dead serious. I should warn you, small towns eat big dreams for breakfast." "Then I guess I'll cook faster than they can chew." Caleb chuckled, and the sound wrapped around my chest like warmth in winter. We drove back in silence, but it wasn't the awkward kind. It was full, charged waiting. That night, we sat on the porch. The cold was creeping in, but neither of us moved. I held a mug of tea between my hands and watched the stars blink into view. "You've changed," he said suddenly. "How so?" "You're quieter, but not in a sad way, like the kind of quiet that knows itself." I let that sit for a second. "And you? You've always been like this." "No," he said. "I was angrier once. At my dad. At the world. But after he passed, after I found the letter, I realized I had two choices. I could keep asking why, or I could start asking what now." I looked at him, really looked. "What now?" He leaned forward. "We figure it out." There was a pause. Then I reached for his hand. "I'm scared," I admitted. "So am I." We didn't kiss. Not then. We just sat, hands clasped, like that was enough for now. A week later, I stood before the town council with a proposal for the flax mill. Caleb helped me design the slides, clean up the numbers, build something that looked real. And when the vote came in, 5 in favor, 1 against, I realized something I hadn't let myself hope for. This place wasn't just where I came from. It could be where I belonged. One morning, I walked past the apple tree in the front yard and saw the first snow falling, thin and silent. I stood there, bare hands to the sky, watching the flakes melt on my skin. Inside, the fireplace crackled. Caleb was making breakfast. And on the windowsill, beside the geranium Martha had planted years ago, sat a new photo, him and me, side by side, looking not at the camera but at each other. Later that day, I received a letter from the rehab center. It was from my mother. The handwriting was uneven but strong. "Lauren, thank you for coming back. Thank you for not letting my mistakes become your inheritance. I see you now. I see who you are. And I am proud. Love." Mom, I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears come. Not because it hurt, but because it finally didn't. Maybe this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet choices, just staying. And maybe love isn't always about beginning again. Sometimes it's about staying long enough to end better. Sometimes we spend years trying to outrun our past, thinking that if we just move fast enough, far enough, we can leave behind the things that hurt us. the silence, the betrayal, the words never said, and the ones we can't forget. But what I've learned is this: you can't outrun something that lives inside you. You have to walk back to it, look it in the eye, and ask it to speak. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a series of choices made in quiet kitchens on long drives, in the space between one breath and the next. And healing? Healing doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it shows up as a letter in your hand. Sometimes as a warm cup of tea. Sometimes as someone who sees you, truly sees you, and stays anyway. If you're holding on to pain, waiting for the perfect time to face it, maybe this is your sign. Not to forget, not to erase, but to begin again exactly where it once ended.